for meditation. Please be seated. Honorable members, we apologize for the slight delay, but we had to sort out the clock because there's a problem with the other mechanism that is supposed to be on the podium. So you will follow immediately on your left-hand side. You will see the time allocation and when it expires. The secretary will now read the order.
Debate on vote number 9, planning, monitoring and evaluation appropriation bill.
Switch on your microphone, please. We can't hear you.
Debate on vote number 9, planning, monitoring and evaluation appropriation bill.
I now call upon the Honorable Minister in the Presidency to introduce the budget vote. Honorable Minister.
Yes, I'm the DSG.
But you're here in your capacity as the Minister in the Presidency.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honorable Chairperson of the session, Honorable Frolic, Deputy Minister in Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Ms. Pinky Kekana, Acting Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Ms. Telisa Mgweba, members of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, honorable members of the House, Director General in the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Dr. Robert Nkuna, and the entire team that is here today. Secretary of the National Planning Commission, Dr. Gifiwe Masiteng, distinguished guests, members of the media, fellow South Africans. I'm actually Honorable
Just continue,
Makaula.
Honorable Member.
Honorable Makaula, I also acknowledge you. It is an honor to table the budget policy statement of the Department of the Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation for the year, for financial year 2023-2024. We use this opportunity to outline the department's plan for the current financial year and to reflect on the government's performance in the implementation of developmental goals. These goals are embedded in the National Development Plan and in the 7 priority areas for the 6th administration as outlined in the MTSF framework from 2019 to 2024. During the 2023 State of the Nation address, His Excellency President Matamela Ramaphosa acknowledged the collective hope and resilience as one of the defining attributes of our nation. It is through hope that we have been able to navigate and conquer the most challenging times as a country, including the recent COVID-19 pandemic, the 2021 July unrest, and the natural disasters that have affected parts of our country. Despite the compounding challenges, we remain resilient and forward-looking in our pursuit to rebuild our economy, restore social cohesion, and strengthen social compacts in advancing social economic development, which is very important in our view. We reflect on almost the 30 years of South African democracy and recognize the significant milestone achieved during this period, including the expansion of our social protection systems, the increased access to basic education, the improved responsiveness of criminal justice system, and strengthening of diplomatic relations across Africa and the world. House Chairperson, allow me to say that equally, we remain critical of the persistent barriers that hinder our country's development. This includes high rates of unemployment, especially among the youth, increased in crime, particularly gender-based violence and femicide, the rising cost of living, and the stark inequalities that exist in society. Through it all, we must hold on to our hope and resilience as a nation in order to protect and advance our democratic gains. We have less than 7 years to go to work together towards the realization of National Development Plan Vision 2020 or 2030, which is obviously the South Africa we want to live in. Honorable Chairperson, priority one of the 7 priorities under the 6th administration is to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. A developmental state is anchored on strong strategic leadership, the effective use of resources, people-centered approaches, a robust long-term plan, institutional capacity, service processes, and technological platforms to function and deliver on the country's imperative through a social contract with our people. As DPME, our contribution to this priority lie in strengthening the coordination of all spheres of government, the legislature, and to a certain extent, judiciary, to operate in alignment so that we can then now be able to speak about national interest, including our society, of course. In 2021, we introduced the national framework towards the professionalization of public service. The framework is among several interventions introduced to ensure a capable, qualified, and competent workforce in the public sector that will provide strategic leadership at the political and administrative interface. The Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation continues to support the President of South Africa in the assessment of annual performance of executive or his executive to ensure that service delivery is an integral aspect of their priorities as we approach the end of our medium-term strategic framework for this cycle. As DPME, our role is to assess the alignment of APPs with the broader NDP and the MTSF priorities, of course, and the State of the Nation address. The APPs must also be embedded in budgetary processes of government and institutionalized across all spheres to ensure better coordination on the provision of service delivery to all our people in society. The cross-cutting focus of all annual performance plan must include the rights of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Through this, we are going to be able to know if we are enhancing the quality of life, because we can only be able to enhance the quality of life if the lowest of the lowest in society are actually getting the services that we are trying to put in so that we can be able to intervene where it's necessary. As DPME, once more, we will continue to work with the sectors to promote a result-based approach and to improve alignment with the NDP, the MTSF through the standardization of indicators of sectors with concurrent function. To date, there have been standardized indicators for 8 sectors that were approved for implementation in the financial year 2023-2024. Furthermore, we are facilitating a series of engagement during the current financial year with different stakeholders, including civil society, our business sector, different industries, of course, the multilateral organizations globally, developmental partners and citizens aimed at enhancing the capacity of our state. We need to activate citizenry as a tool for promoting socio-economic development. The stakeholder engagements will inform our contributions as the DPME in reconfiguration of the state through informed recommendations based on research, consultation, and innovation. I do know that most of the honorable members, of course, have raised the concern with the president that indeed we've got too many departments. So the reconfiguration, we are trying to make sure that at least our input in the reconfiguration of government will be based on what I've just said: innovation, consultation, and research. It will be research-based. The process towards the modernization and automation of planning is underway. It forms part of government-wide electronic quarterly performance system that aims to improve the efficiency of the national planning system through alignment across different planning instruments and effectively utilizing new technology, including the AI, the artificial intelligence. In addition, our collaboration with spheres of government is improving through the National Steering Committee for Integrated Planning. The committee is a high-level platform for engagement, consultation, sharing of best practices, and unblocking development obstacles across government, all spheres. As part of building state accountability and reinforcing ethical values, the government has developed the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. The National Anti-Corruption Strategy set out a comprehensive program of action to address both the preventative and reactive measures in the fight against corruption. The process of implementing the NACS has led to the appointment of the Independent National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council by President Ramaphosa in 2022. The council brings together representatives from civil society and business to work alongside the government to prevent, eliminate corruption, which is something that we all want to do, of course, in government. In addition, the council will provide advisory inputs on matters related to government's comprehensive response to the recommendation of the Judicial Commission on Inquiry in allegations of state capture. To date, honorable members, the government has developed an action plan which was tabled in Parliament by President Ramaphosa in 2022 to respond to the recommendation of the Commission. As the department, we aim to strengthen integrated planning and coordination of programs within and between the spheres of government and to curb the persistence of corruption that we always see. House Chairperson, one of the key interventions of this priority is to enhance the coordination between national, provincial, and local government and to improve service delivery through the district model, which is or also known as the DDM. But we only don't want to do this. We also want to make sure that active citizenry through business and civil society, and to a certain extent, think tanks do play a part as well, because the DDMs, as much as it is government, they are supposed to unlock that which needs intervention for society to be able to get service delivery that they want. The implementation of the DDM is able to put policy and legislative system into action to promote localization and improve service delivery, as I've alluded to. The DDM is making significant progress in almost all districts across the country. It is reported that districts have developed their one plans to outline areas of socioeconomic development in their respective localities. The plans are being evaluated to coordinate participation of all spheres of government in the implementation process. This is key intervention of the National Steering Committee for Integrated Planning. The mandate of the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation is one of the strategic pillars of a capable, ethical and developmental state. We always hear people saying we need to build a developmental state. It becomes important that, of course, in whatever it is that we do it based on understanding that at the end of the day, what will be evaluated is if we do have a state that we can say is developmental in nature. We must unlock the catalytic potential of the country's planning system to advance developmental goals, all of them, not only by government, but by also civil society and business as well. In this regard, the department has made significant gains in strengthening integration and harmonization of planning across the state machinery. This includes conducting extensive assessment study on the state of planning, followed by consultation with stakeholders that led to the development of the policy framework for integrated planning. The framework was adopted by Cabinet for implementation in 2022. The policy framework and its implementation plan builds on progress made in institutionalizing planning and seeks to address gaps such as the fragmentation of planning, inadequate capabilities, and the need to improve coordination and modernize the planning system towards achievement of better results. We have realized that a lot can be done, but if it is not coordinated, the impact will not be felt. Therefore, it becomes important that whatever service delivery that we take to our people must be coordinated so that the impact can be felt and can be seen. The policy framework that we're talking about has further informed the production of the Development Planning Framework Bill. The bill provides a legislative framework for the National Development Planning System involving the three spheres of government and organs of state informed by the constitutional powers and functions. It further sets out planning functions of the DPME and the National Planning Commission. We aim to table this bill to Cabinet and Parliament in current financial year. And we are hoping that you'll make time, of course, to ensure that it's passed, because we really need it in order to be able to reach our goals. Honorable members, to improve the impact of the planning system in advancing the development agenda, we must ensure adequate resource allocation. The DPME has developed the budget prioritization framework, also known as the BPF, to facilitate the alignment of planning priorities and the national budgeting processes on an annual basis. The BPF is a key input in the budget deliberations and the medium-term expenditure committee, which makes the recommendation of funding allocation for the country. Therefore, the department will continue to undertake an annual assessment of the alignment of budget prioritization framework, the medium-term budget policy statement, and the national budget. In the financial year of 2022-2023, a research report was commissioned to assess the alignment between the national planning system and the budgeting process. This research revealed that there is relatively good alignment between intervention plans and budgets. However, these interventions are not translated into result-based targets within institutional plans. Therefore, as DPME, we have recommended further reforms to improve alignment of the planning and the budgeting system. The process to institutionalize and professionalize development planning must be supported with resources and be guided by a long-term robust plan such as the National Development Plan. We plan to change, we plan to impact, but most of all, as I've already said, we plan to develop. That's what's important at the end of the day. We don't just plan so that we can tick boxes that we did this and that, but we need development to be seen and be felt by our people. Honorable members, the second priority of the sixth administration is on economic transformation and job creation, which is very important, and I think we can all agree on that. In 2022, we released the midterm monitoring report, which indicated that the government continues to make strides in promoting inclusive economic growth aimed at addressing the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The strides are made in the context of economic shocks, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the energy crisis, and other structural constraints. One of the notable interventions led by President Ramaphosa is the South African Investment Conference, which has been able to raise about 1.5 trillion worth of investment pledges over the past 5 years, which exceeded the initial target that we had by 26%. These pledges are aimed at increasing investment and implementation of economic reforms. As DPME, we are consolidating a framework to assess the impact of this investment, because having pledges is actually different from having investment. So we really do believe that if we develop a framework to check if this investment are actually having an impact desired for our economy, we will then now be able to ensure that at least our citizens does get what they need to be able to strive as we receive all this investment that we are celebrating today, or promises. This entails consultations and deliberations with captains of industries, the private sector, of course, multilateral companies, and other critical stakeholders at a domestic and international level to engage on trade relations and social impact. We're doing this precisely because we believe that as government, ours is to create an enabling environment, but it's business that would be able to create all the jobs and the targets that we need to develop our people. During 2022, there has been significant progress in the implementing of economic reconstruction and recovery plan aimed at unleashing South Africa's economic potential alongside infrastructure reforms. This includes the establishment of the National Economic Crisis Committee, also known as NECOM, in 2022, aimed at coordinating a response to the electricity crisis with a clear mandate to bring an end to the load shedding and accelerate new energy generation. To date, the licensing requirement for embedded generation projects has been lifted, and the pipeline has grown to over 100 private sector projects with more than 9,000 megawatts of capacity anticipated. Government has also announced an ESCOM debt relief of about 254 billion, which is approximately 168 billion in capital and 86 billion interest over the next 3 years. The government is also pursuing greater competition in transport and logistics through third-party access to the freight rail sector in line with 2022 white paper on rail policy. The white paper presents a multi-decade vision of how South Africa's railway sector should evolve over time. In addition, a freight road to rail migration-based document was developed in the first quarter of the financial year 2022 to 2023. The road to rail performance between 2016 and 2022 indicates that about 724,117 truckloads have been moved off road to rails. This translates to a total of approximately 24.62 million tons of volumes that have been transported through rail network in the same period. We are aware that this progress is insufficient for our economy to meet the needs and expectations from various stakeholders, but it is signaling a positive trajectory for movement of goods from our road to rail. In addition, the DPME will monitor the performance of state-owned enterprises within the transport sector and government departments in facilitating this process. We won't only do this, but we'll also coordinate their operations and ensure that at least they do speak to what we need for the economy. We must leverage on the instrumental role of SOEs in driving forward structural and economic reforms. This requires we invest in stability, effectiveness, and the financial sustainability of our SOEs to improve responsiveness in delivering their mandate. The rollout of critical infrastructure is underway in water sanitation, in energy and transport. Projects worth about 134.2 billion are in procurement. An additional 232.3 billion worth of projects are also in construction. And lastly, 3.9 billion worth of projects have also been completed in this regard. Above all, we are making a clarion call on citizens to protect critical economic infrastructure, to partner with law enforcement to protect this critical infrastructure, and to report any criminal activity, including cable theft, vandalism, as these actions threaten economic growth and the performance. And it's always good to see citizens playing a role in at least owning up to things that are saving them for service delivery, because they are essentially the owners of whatever it is that government have. In my capacity as Minister in Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, and the chair of the Public-Private Growth Initiative, I will elevate the call for the private sector to make sustained contribution in developing, maintaining, and expanding economic infrastructure, because government can't do it alone. As much as we put an enabling environment, we do need business to play and partner with us so that we can then now be able to create the South Africa we all want to live in. The PPGI will be central in facilitating engagement and collaboration between government and the private sector. So it won't only be us asking them or them complaining, but it will be us talking together, most probably also planning together to be able to achieve our goals. Through partnerships, the initiative aims to promote rapid growth in the South African economy, to build and strengthen a relationship of trust and cooperation between the public and private sector, and to also implement joint interventions, as I've already said. We've seen it happening in developing countries like India. It's working so well, and I do believe that if we try to do it here at home, it will definitely yield to the fruits that we will all enjoy. Honorable Chairperson, the third priority of the sixth administration is on education, skills, and health. A people-centered approach to a developmental state requires that we invest and build the capabilities of citizens through the provision of quality education and health services. Since the dawn of democracy in 1994, we have made great strides to move towards universal access to education. The National Student Financial Aid, known as NSFAS, is steadily increasing access to post-school education and training, making it possible for students from poor backgrounds to attend TVET colleges and public universities, of course. As part of the South African Connect programs, efforts are also being made to upscale connectivity in our schools and create a conducive environment for learners to embrace technological innovations. The DPME has initiated engagements with the Department of Basic Education and Department of Communication and Digital Technologies for a discussion on the possibility of increasing the allocated bandwidth for teaching and learning. We call on telecommunication companies to also participate and contribute to ensuring that our children are not excluded from the digital revolution. This includes infrastructure support, training, and education, and access to connectivity, and any other thing that maybe they can be aware of that they believe we can actually implement in reaching this goal that we have. During the current MTSF, a lot of emphasis has been placed on improving the overall healthcare system of our country. The government has developed the National Health Insurance Bill in 2020 for the implementation of the National Health Insurance, also known as NHI. The bill aims to improve the total life expectancy of South Africans through programs that are aimed at curbing the impact of both communicable and non-communicable diseases. Subsequent to the completion of public hearings on the NHI bill in 2020 and its classifications as a desirable bill by the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Health, we are pleased that the bill is receiving attention at the National Assembly. We welcome the robust engagement in Parliament and believe that the process will lead to legislation that advances universal quality healthcare for our citizens, which we are all part of course. Notwithstanding, thank you very much. Notwithstanding, we have identified with concern the increasing bill of medical claims, especially in Gauteng and Eastern Cape provinces. This challenge strains the already limited financial resources of the government and has the potential to undermine efforts to build an accessible and quality healthcare system.
Honourable Minister, your time is now expired.
Okay.
I've agreed to a request. It's your maiden budget speech.
Yes.
To give you additional time.
How long?
No, that time has also expired now.
I was enjoying myself.
Yes,
But I'll
see.
come back again for
Yes.
this. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the time given to me.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. We'll just adjust your time at the end accordingly. The next speaker is the Honourable Mgweba.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister for Planning and Evaluation, Honorable Maruping Ramokgopa, Deputy Minister, Honorable Ms. Pinky Kekana, Honorable members, the Director General for the department, Mr. Nkuna, and the entire team, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure and honor to stand before this august House to debate the budget vote of the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. Planning remains a critical pillar towards the success of any country. To achieve goals and objectives, there is a need to have a plan. Planning, monitoring and evaluation reports provides a basis for the analysis and critique of public sector performance and monitoring systems that are purely based on the performance of organs of the state to realize the objectives of our constitutional democracy. Without effective planning, monitoring and evaluation, it will be impossible to measure government performance, whether we are in the right direction or whether progress and success can be claimed and how future efforts might be improved. Honorable House Chair, we can't improve what we don't measure. Monitoring and evaluation is a critical function for a learning state. A learning state is critical as it strides away from dogma, but focus on the concrete conditions of our people and of our capacity to implement policies. The department continues to play a pivotal role of guiding government's long-term planning, strategic planning, and annual performance planning. The department's role is to lead the development of the National Development Plan's 5-year implementation and to provide a medium-term roadmap. The journey of the 6th administration is approaching an end, And therefore, our government, through the department, have to provide the country with a performance report on the 5-year review of the medium-term strategic framework implementation report. It is a time for the department to reflect on the performance of the 6th administration and account in terms of the implementation of the medium-term strategic framework of the National Development Plan. Honorable House Chair, the department has developed a medium-term strategic framework monitoring and reporting tool to assist in assessing performance of the departments and further used in compiling reports on the progress made to determine whether government is on the track to deliver on the objectives of the National Development Plan. In assessing and measuring results, alignment of instruments across government departments towards monitoring the deliverables of the MTSF, of the NDP, will take our beloved country forward. High-level indicators on the MTSF deliverables will also assist to measure the NDP as well as performance of departments. Honorable members, the department is charged with the responsibility of ensuring alignment of medium-term strategic framework of the NDP with department strategic and annual performance plans. The department scrutinizes the plans on an annual basis prior submission of the annual performance plans to Parliament. But however, there is a trend observed whereby some government departments continue tabling amended strategic and annual performance plans without effecting the recommendations from the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. Such anomalies, Honorable Minister, can be addressed through formulation of the legislation. It is long overdue that a key critical department such as DPME exists without any legislation to govern its expected activities. Such a legislation should empower the department with the powers to intervene to ensure a nexus of policy, planning and budgeting. This is fundamental for the implementation of the African National Congress manifesto commitments. Honorable House Chair and honorable members, the implementation of the policy framework on the integrated planning should assist the department to strengthen areas to be incorporated in the proposed integrated development framework bill. We appeal that the department finalize the bill in order to harmonize the planning system of government to deliver the well-coordinated services. Honorable House Chair, the district development model is another delivery intervention established by the government of the African National Congress to end silo planning. The model is indeed a noble idea which improves coherence and coordination in planning, implementation, and budgeting. A lot has been achieved through the DDM, especially in the pilot district municipalities. The monitoring and development tool developed by the department and Statistics South Africa should produce monitoring results to measure the efficacy of the model. The district development model should not be a framework for government alone. The vision of districts should also shape plans of private sector organization and business to align with the district economic development trajectory. House Chair, the district development plan consolidates state capability across the 3 spheres of government to optimize outcomes and impact. This is in line with the creation of a single public service, which is critical to improve the agility of the state. As the African National Congress, we are pleased that the department has begun to monitor the implementation of the gender-based violence framework. The gender-based violence threatens a person's physical and psychological integrity. Everyone has the right to feel safe and secure, and where there is not present, the people's ability to function in the family, community, and society is likely to be impaired as self-realization and development are affected. Monitoring and implementation of the framework will assist the government in minimizing cases of the gender-based violence and femicide. GBV requires all state entities to contribute to solving it. This is so because GBV cases are caused by multiple factors and there is no silver bullet to solve the problem. It requires all departments working with the people and various social partners. Honorable House Chair, another key entity in the president is Brand South Africa, which is an entity tasked with delivering integrated marketing, communication, reputation management solutions and interventions as it markets the South African brand locally and abroad. Its purpose is to develop and implement a proactive and coordinated international marketing and communication strategy for South Africa to contribute to job creation, poverty reduction, and to attract inward investment, trade, and tourism. Since the discussion of the national micro restructuring of government, the entity has been confronted with a plethora of challenges. We are of the view that the major debate should be concluded before the end of the financial year, with providing a clear direction on both entities affected. House Chair, we call on the ministry to adopt an interventionist approach as the ministry in the presidency. The reports that are submitted to the DPME should serve as a basis to enable the president and cabinet to respond to matters decisively. The people want their material condition to change, and the department has a relevant programs to firstly receive reports from entities and citizens through the presidential hotline. The department should also be allocated more funds to develop the required capacity to implement their mandate in an impactful manner. The department should develop intervening capacity to accelerate service delivery where challenges are reported. Honorable Minister, the interventions of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan should be a key strategic focus of the department through the sectoral reports. Various departments should have measurable targets which are primarily focused on intervention of the ERRP. The ERRP remains a critical program to recover from the impact of the pandemic. Lastly, House Chair, our monitoring and evaluation of the ministerial performance and for accounting officers should be strengthened, and such reports should have consequential action. This is important to assert the agents of good performance. State-owned entities are also critical, and we welcome the fact that the entity will be compiling reports on this regard. The test remains the impact of the monitoring and evaluation reports. We are confident that the DPME will enable interventions for decisive action in the interest of the people of South Africa. We thank the Minister, the Deputy Minister, the DG, and the Portfolio Committee for forging ahead with the task of building our country. The ANC supports the budget vote of the DPME. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Mbele.
Ngiyabonga Salonga Phambili. The Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation carries the mandate of supporting and facilitating the implementation of the National Development Plan, coordinating planning programs across governments, and monitoring and evaluation to support the implementation of those programs. Specifically, as mentioned earlier by the Minister, this is meant to take shape through sector-specific medium-term plans and delivery agreements with national departments, as well as with provincial and local governments. Key to the achievement of this mandate is a capable state with the skills and political will to align and drive forward momentum to these ends and overcome the hurdles and sandpits that stand in the way of realizing the developmental challenges facing our country. However, despite the Minister's assurances earlier that things are in process or are in the pipeline, we all know that a capable state has never been a more elusive possibility than now. And it is astounding that this government continues to harbor such a lofty fantasy for itself. And Minister, I must say, if you believe that the government is providing an enabling environment for business in the midst of load shedding, red tape, and crumbling infrastructure, then I'm afraid I must point out that this only reinforces the fantasy land that this government inhabits. While the department's plan speaks to the importance of localization of interventions, regrettably, it falls short of endorsing true and meaningful decentralization in governance and service delivery matters, which is one of the real and radical reforms needed to enhance performance. And in this regard, the DDM is merely a red herring that will not meet that benchmark. The DA has long advocated for the principle of decentralization, whereby local and provincial governments that are proven to be competent should be enabled to take the lead role of planning and implementation in areas of concurrent competence with the necessary authority of management and resources from national fiscus in order to better meet the needs of local communities. And I'm glad that Honorable Mgweba mentioned everyone's right to feel secure and safe, because the need for such a 180-degree shift in the business of governments is no more glaring, for example, than when it comes to addressing the scourge of violent crime. Because we know that when it comes to policing, it is well demonstrated in international best practice that it must be done in a way that is as devolved and as localized as possible, so it can be customized closest and optimally responsive to the dynamics and context of communities on the ground that law enforcement serves. The simple fact, Chairperson, is that having only a single point of planning and implementation when it comes to governance and service delivery also means having a single point of failure, e.g. ESCOM. However well-intentioned and developmental, quote unquote, things may be on paper. So if the National Development Plan is indeed taken seriously by this government, then it must be given ample and broad opportunity to be pursued in multiple and adaptive ways through a decentralized model. While the department seeks to support the government's strategic priorities, it has also admitted to the Portfolio Committee that its monitoring and evaluation findings and recommendations on departments are not implemented. But this is not surprising at all, given that good governance and compliance management fundamentally run counter to the ANC modus operandi of cronyism and cadre deployment. This systemic sclerosis makes it all the more urgent for the government to get out of the way of progress and much needed economic development and job creation through a second required wholesale reform of deregulation, so that business and civic stakeholders can play a more free and active role in harnessing our country's resources and unleashing the massive potential out there to create value that expands opportunities and improves livelihoods. If the government cannot quickly and effectively fix ESCOM, then we say deregulate power generation to allow new players to come in and for local and provincial governments to innovate through partnerships that can solve the load shedding crisis. If the government is unable to address unemployment, then deregulate the labor regime and environment of business to remove the barriers and disincentives to labor-intensive industry and other economic activity that can absorb the massive pool of unskilled and inexperienced surplus labor. As long as the efforts and outputs of this department, whether in their evaluation reports or supporting both Operation Pakisa and Vulindlela, are not premised on shifting the government's gears in the direction of more decentralization and more deregulation, then our country will at best continue being stuck in stagnation and at worst be pushed ever more quickly down the path of decline. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Kumane.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let us first greet the Commander-in-Chief and the President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, President Julius Malema, the officials of the EFF, commissars and the ground forces. Chairperson, the 2023 budget debate takes place while we are celebrating 10 years since the formation of the Economic Freedom Fighters. We are celebrating 10 years of unbroken commitment to fighting for service delivery. We are celebrating 10 years of holding the executive accountable and monitoring service delivery in all spheres of government, unlike the old cronies that are not delivering. The Economic Freedom Fighters is the only political party since our arrival in Parliament in 2014 that says there's no planning in government. People just wake up and in the morning and do as they wish. Chair, when Mr. Ramaphosa announced in his first cabinet in 2019 and did away with the Ministry of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we welcomed the decision. But we see now how Mr. Ramaphosa wants to reward people who helped him secure his second term in the ANC squabbles. The ministry has been brought back. We said that there is no monitoring of service delivery, and there is why it will take 20 years to give people of Guyana water, despite all ANC presidents visiting Guyana and promising the people of Guyana water. We said that there is no evaluation of government programs to ensure that departments do what they plan according to the budget allocated, and our people indeed are receiving services. This is why we said in 2014, we must close this department. We said there's no need to have a Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. The reality is that, Chair, with and without the Ministry of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Mr. Ramaphosa's government has no capacity to plan, monitoring and evaluate any work. The National Development Plan has failed because it was based on foolish assumptions. The so-called presidential hotlines has failed because it was just another tender for some crony in the ruling party. Instead of taking charge of his cabinet, Mr. Ramaphosa is busy centralizing ministries and departments in his office. Soon we will end up with 2 parallel cabinets. In fact, we are already there. And that is why you're not made a minister. You will always remain a deputy minister. As things stand, there are no engagements between national and provincial government, state-owned entities, and municipalities. We went to the Northern Cape and the Free State for oversight, and it is clear that there is a crisis of leadership and planning under the ANC government. And the sooner we vote them out, the better, so that we can deliver services to our people. Chairperson, this is what needs to happen. We need to do away with this ministry as a start. We were correct since 2014, we were correct in 2019, and we are still correct even today. People are crying for ministries. We need to do away with the so-called National Development Plan and work on a plan that is centered on building the state and government capacity in order to abolish the tenders. This NDP is not working, and you know it for a fact, and we want to argue about it. We need to reduce the number of ministries because we still have ministries that are not adding value, like the so-called deputy ministers. But they are only used to manage squabbles inside the ruling party. We must go back to one ministry for education. We must combine social development and health. We must combine human settlement, water and sanitation. Chair. We don't need a ministry for small business development. This department should be a unit inside trade, industry, and competition, and should be at the center of South Africa's industrial policy. Lastly, Chairperson, as I conclude, we had agreed that there is no significant role in that the deputy ministers who are making noise here are playing. We must do away with all deputy ministers. These people cannot even act in the absence of the cabinet members. We don't need deputy ministers. They are just a waste of the state resources. The Economic Freedom Fighters reject the proposed budget for the budget of planning, monitoring and evaluation. There is no reason, Chair, why these ministers must exist. We need to have a department that are taking our government serious and our public serious. We need to have government that takes services to the people. We need to reduce irregular and expenditures by the so-called government. Only if we can have the proper government that will give service to the people of Guyana, that will give water to the people of Guyana, that will make sure that potholes are eradicated in the whole country. And we must do away with all these deputy ministers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. Order. The next speaker is the Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much.
Order, Honorable Members.
Hi, Kapisa.
Order.
Tulamsindo. Kapisa.
Order, Honorable Paulson. Just calm down.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Firstly, let me say I don't serve on this committee, so I'll be sharing some views of the IFP and from some views that I've gathered over the last number of 10 or 12 or 13 years. Firstly, Honorable Minister, I must appreciate the enthusiasm with which you approach the work of this department. And hearing you speak today gives us hope. But is hope going to meet the aspirations of the millions of people in South Africa? I think that is the question. Honorable Minister, Western Cape. Honorable Minister, I was very honored to serve on this committee, I think in 2010, when it was first established. And we've been having discussions about the creation of a Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation since then. And I think it's important for us to go back into the genesis of this particular department. The department was created, I come from KZN and you are heckling already. Yeah. The department was first created by former President Jacob Zuma in response to public protests and outcries about service delivery. And it was created so that this department would monitor the performance and evaluate the performance of all other government departments so that the people of South Africa could get the kind of service delivery that they should be getting. Now, I think the question that we have to ask ourselves, in the last 10 or 12 years, have we improved to that extent that this department was able to do its work effectively and efficiently? The challenges that we had then still exist today, Honorable Minister. And one of the big challenges when this department was created was turf wars, turf protection. When no department wanted this, the department coming from the top, wielding a big stick on them and measuring their performance and evaluating their service delivery. I think that still exists even today. And that is going to be your challenge, Honorable Minister. Your work is cut out for you in ensuring that all the government departments and SOEs appreciate the work that your department has been entrusted with by the presidency. If we look at our SOEs, can we say in the last 10 to 12 years, their performance has improved? The answer is no. If we look at our rail services that you spoke about, it is collapsing. If we look at transport, I mean, I drive to Ulundi quite often. And the one day in a distance of about 20 kilometers, I counted 300 trucks laden with coal and other products going to Richards Bay. Now, and that was because the rail system had collapsed. So these are things, I think, if the presidency is serious about this department, you must correct